Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. And again, sorry for the delay in getting started. I am Ozzie Parenti, Commissioner, Chairman of the Planning and Zoning Commission. And welcome to, this is a special meeting of the Orange Town Plan and Zoning Commission. So again, I'm Ozzie Parenti, and with us this evening, Commissioner
Tom Tarenti.
Paul
Kaplan.
Jack Demerjen, zoning administrator.
And Jenny Bowser, recording secretary.
All right, we're waiting on just one more commissioner tonight. I mean, we're not waiting anymore, but he's on his way. Kevin Cornell, and Commissioner Judy Smith is on vacation, will not be with us this evening. So I'd like to start, there's just, one item on our special meeting agenda, and I'd like to just read that, and then we can get started after that with the presentation from our consultants. So the one item on the agenda is the Town Plan and Zoning Commission will hold a special meeting to conduct a public workshop with representatives of BFJ Planning, the town's planning consultant. The purpose of this public meeting is to seek feedback from the broader Orange community, create a vision for the plan, referring to our plan of conservation and development, and identify key issues and opportunities within the town. Key topics for public feedback will include land use, open space, transportation, municipal facilities, the local economy, and environmental concerns. Commissioner Kevin Cornell has arrived. Okay, so, without any further delay, I'd like to introduce Frank Fish. He is in charge of, he is the consultant hired by the town to work with the commission on preparing a plan of conservation and development. Mr. Fish will make the presentation with the rest of his project group this evening. So, Frank,
Great.
please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You can see up here on the slide that our staff is working directly with Jack, and then we're really advising the P&Z, who's introduced themselves, but all the P&Z names are here, and everyone's here except Judy Smith. But so the P&Z's the client here, if you will, for us, because only the P&Z can adopt the comprehensive plan or the plan of conservation and development. We usually call it a POCD for short, but they are the ones under state law that can adopt that. So in fact, we're working through Jack with the P&Z, and we've been meeting with them sort of on a monthly basis. So I want to just mention on our team, and each of people, Suzanne Goldberg, who's here, I'll be turning things over to her in a few minutes. Mark Frecker is our transportation sort of person on the team, and Thomas Madden is our economic person on the team. So with that, I'm just going to go ahead and just mention the agenda tonight. I think our presentation's aimed at being, about 20 minutes or so, and give you an idea of, well, just what is. I know some of you in the audience may be very experienced in this and know all about a plan of conservation and development, but we'll just mention what it is briefly, give you a project overview, what's the timeline that we're working under, what are the proposed chapters of what the plan is, and then what we'd like to do is also mention we're meeting with department heads and commissions, so we call those stakeholder interviews. We're going through that process now, and it will continue on during the public outreach period, which will also include a survey. And then we're going to present just a little bit of information to you tonight on like I kind of call it Orange today, what is the current population, that type of thing. And then we want to take a coffee break, and I thank Jack for the coffee. And we've got boards set up around here, and I'm going to explain those boards later just before the coffee break, and you'll have a chance to comment by putting dots on those boards against the existing goals of your current plan, the 2015 plan, just to give us an idea. Do you agree with them? Have things changed here for instance, one thing tremendously that has changed to me, at one time, Connecticut Department of Transportation had a proposal for a train station here in Orange, and that's gone away. They built it in West Haven. So that's no longer an issue before the town at all. So things may have changed since 2015. That's one of them. So and there's plenty of opportunity to write on things. And then after that coffee break, I'd like to end with just get back together again, and like a New England town hall, just to hear comments. Anybody has a comment, question, so a Q&A. So that's sort of the agenda for this evening. And then I'll be very brief on this. What is a conservation and development plan? What is a POCD? And state law mandates that you do one every 10 years. So this is not in some states, it's voluntary. It's not in Connecticut. Connecticut expects every municipality to do a POCD every 10 years. And so it's an expression of your vision for the future. And then it sets the stage, importantly, I think, for a couple of things. And one is your zoning. And many court cases have said that zoning ought to be based on a well-reasoned plan. So every 10 years, hopefully you have a well-reasoned plan, and hopefully the P&Z will be able to do that with this plan. And also, it can set up a to-do list, if you will, for the town, and that could affect things in the capital budget. If there's some things that are important improvements to make in the future, then we will try to get those into the plan. So that's sort of the overall POCD. And as I mentioned, state law requires it every 10 years. It's a guide. So it's different from zoning. The plan is a guide. It's an overall guide for the whole town. But the zoning follows it, and then also the chapters required by the state, for instance, a housing chapter, an open space chapter, we'll have those, as Suzanne will go through those chapters. We'll have all those in the plan. And with that, I'm going to turn it to Suzanne.
Thank you, Frank, and thank you everyone for being here tonight. So as Frank mentioned, I'm the project manager working on the Town of Orange POCD. I'm just going to go over a brief overview of the POCD timeline. So the first task for our firm is to have kickoff meetings with the town, the P&Z, and this will happen throughout the project, but to make sure we're on track with the overall timeline, which we started in October, and we're planning on finishing in just under a year at the end of September. So this will be about a year-long process. Throughout the timeline, we'll also have various community engagement and stakeholder input opportunities. Tonight is the first one, the first public workshop. We'll also be holding a public workshop in March, as well as the public hearing in June. And we will also be launching right after this, Mark will mention this in a little bit more detail, a survey which will be launched online, where we'll ask you all for feedback, building on what we hear tonight, on what that vision should be, and test some of those ideas for the ultimate plan. We've also been meeting with various stakeholders, department heads, commissions, which we'll explain a little bit later, some of those key takeaways so far. The next task, which we've already begun working on, is Orange Today. So that's reviewing prior plans, making sure we're not starting from scratch, building on the work all of you have already done, and then creating a report of existing conditions. In order to see where to go from here, we have to know what's currently in the town and what the existing conditions are. From there, we'll work on the draft plan, draft chapters and recommendations, which we'll present to you at the second public workshop. And then the fourth and final task will be the full draft of the POCD, statutory review by the state, and revisions, and the final adoption planned for fall of next year. The chapter will be split up into 8 chapters, most likely to give a holistic view of the town and what that future vision is. So the first chapter will be the introduction, vision, and goals, which will be partially created tonight by you all by giving feedback on what the previous plan's goals are. Next will be Orange Today, the demographic and socioeconomic trends. Then we'll talk about the built environment, land use and zoning, housing and neighborhoods, economic development, transportation and mobility, quality of life, meaning the historic, cultural, and parks elements, and then lastly, infrastructure, so community systems, sustainability, resilience, water, sewer, septic, all of those sorts of things. This is just a little update on stakeholder meetings. So far we've had plenty of meetings with town departments, boards, and other groups, and this has been a really great way of getting a full picture of what Orange today is, what the existing conditions are, and learning firsthand from you all. You're all experts in the community, and we want to hear what those main priorities and challenges are. That way we can make sure that the goals and vision of the plan align with what the priorities are for you all and the key stakeholders involved in the process. Some of these include the First Selectman, Finance Department, various emergency services departments, Public Works, the Senior Center, Board of Education, Orange Land Trust, the Chamber of Commerce, and the Conservation Commission. Some of the very preliminary takeaways we've had so far, and just an emphasis on the fact that these are preliminary, they could change throughout the process. These are just things we've heard over and over again that we wanted to take particular note of. And if you think any of these are wrong, we invite you to tell us at the end during the Q&A session. We want to hear some feedback from you all. So the first topic that we heard some takeaways on is open space and sustainability. We heard that open space conservation is a very high priority for the town. There's an overall desire to encourage sustainability, natural resource protection. There's a lot of beautiful scenery and assets within the town, and we heard a strong sense of pride in those aspects of Orange and identity. Infrastructure, we know that there's a lack of sewer infrastructure that limits dense development. Transportation management and mobility, there's certain areas, which Mark will get into a little bit, of high crash rates, and these are generally due to high speeds and a high volume of vehicles traveling these roads. We heard that there's certain areas where sidewalks could enhance the commercial environment, improve pedestrian safety. An example is Boston Post Road. And something we know is that state routes are going to require coordination with Connecticut DOT to implement any major traffic solutions. And further in the presentation, we'll identify exactly where those state routes are. Housing and economic development. As said before, there's a desire to balance open space with housing and economic development. Find a good balance of each of those. Preserve the existing single-family neighborhoods, which make up much of the character of the town. Support the existing commercial areas and industrial parks. And lastly, the town services. We know there's an increase in an aging population, and this has led to a need for services to assist these residents. We know the school system is really great in Orange. It's a source of pride for the community. And lastly, we heard that in terms of transportation, public transportation, the town's buses and car service are really important for seniors and disabled populations, and they're very well utilized within the town. I'm going to pass it over to Frank to talk a little bit about Orange today.
By the way, these slides are just a little bit of a snapshot, and as we develop things, we give them to Jack. He gives them to the commission, and when the commission has seen, these will all be, the details of this and what we present tonight will all be up online. So I'm just going to summarize a little bit here, but your population, as many towns in Connecticut, the one I live in too, is about the same. Very, very slight increase in population. In your case, maybe about 2.3%. This is according to the census data. So modest growth. Basically, I would call it a sort of stable population. And mostly 80% is Caucasian or white. You have had some growth, though, in Asian population, and also some in the Black and African-American population, and also in the Hispanic or Latino population. So it's modest growth, but it's what I think one would expect from a suburb, relatively without sewers that you represent. The median age is 45 years old, so a little bit younger than I am, and also a little bit older than New Haven County, the whole county. And it's, by the way, it is a result of the baby boom, who was born between sort of 1946 and 1964. It's the largest single bulge in the American population at least in my memory. So you have an aging population, but it's a significant population. And this is not just unique to Orange. It's all over the state and, of course, the country. So that is something to take into consideration of changing population demographics. And then 25% of the population is 55 plus. So it's a need for services for an aging population, a senior population that might face the town, and also some possibly different. I visited a couple of developments here as Jack and I went around, and some very good examples of some developments aimed at actually seniors. So that's one issue. Also, just income and employment. Income has gone up. Median household income went up 25,000 from 2010 to 2020. So you've got a healthy median household income, and you've also got a good workforce. It happens to be the largest proportion of workers is kind of in education, health, social services industry. It's not unusual, but you also have significant private companies here also. So you have a tax base that's also helpful to the town along Route 1 and particularly south of Route 1, the I-95 corridor. So with that, I'm going to turn this to Mark for a couple of transportation slides, and then we're going to get into a wrap-up.
Thanks, Frank. So yeah, it was mentioned earlier, I will be focusing a bit on the transportation and mobility chapter of the POCD, and the next two slides really are just a preface kind of the work to come. We've got to start on some of the mapping. So this first slide here, this is really just a really important reminder. We like to always remind communities of roadway jurisdiction, jurisdiction meaning who controls the roadways and where those are. So this map here is a really important piece of transportation planning, and that's the reminder that in Orange, like many communities, there are a lot of state routes, as you all know, right? So Route 114, Route 152, 121, 15, and 34, all these roads are controlled by the state. Any improvements must be coordinated and really led by the state. But that being said, even if the town can't go out tomorrow and do improvements on these roads on their own accord, POCDs really do provide an important channel for goals and a vision to get out there, and for that to be part of the town's platform of what would like to be seen on those roadways. So that's an important reminder in terms of jurisdiction. The next slide here, I will not go through all these numbers, but we've also got to start looking at roadway classification. So classification basically is a hierarchy, a tiered system of how the most kind of trafficked arterial roads, how they relate to more minor roads. So for example, here the map you see, thinking of the interstate system, tied to the principal arterials, major collectors, and minor arterials. All of these roadways are also an important part of traffic planning. So we do, for all these roadways, have data on traffic volumes, which is called the average AADT, the average annual daily traffic volumes. All this data is what we'll be kind of looking at as we further assess the roadway system and the chances to make targeted recommendations at certain roads or certain intersections. I also want to highlight that we will be doing a crash analysis. One of the kind of data-driven components that we like to look at is safety concerns on roadways. Where are the most accidents happening? Are there fatalities tied to those accidents? Where are the high injury locations? Ultimately, that's a really important metric to look at to see from a safety perspective, which roadways can stand or should be improved to really enhance the safety of the community. So that will be an analysis that we're undertaking. But tonight, we really do want to hear from you in terms of other targeted road projects. Any ideas for sidewalks? Again, there are constraints where sidewalks can go. I mentioned the piece about jurisdiction, but just thinking also of the off-road system, a little bit less of a transit focus, but more of just kind of town-wide circulation, the idea of trails, and of course, Orange has an amazing open space network. What are the opportunities or other opportunities that people are seeking to better connect the open spaces in the town? And that's a component of this chapter as well that can reinforce the open space piece. Just some next steps to recap here. Suzanne mentioned earlier that another big step in the engagement process is that we will be launching a public survey that will be early next year. This will be, a way for us to importantly engage people who are not in the room tonight, hopefully to get more input from folks. That survey will be really in the format of targeted questions, seeking feedback to specific questions around, draft ideas, perhaps. Generally, in the months ahead, we will be proceeding with drafting chapters for the POCD, really guided by the vision and the goals to lead each of those chapters and those kind of explorations for each chapter. And then also, the second time we'll be having a workshop is expected in March, in the spring. That will be really, compared to tonight, this is more of an open house, kind of town hall style workshop, where at this stage, nothing's set, but we've discussed the idea of perhaps that workshop being a little bit more of a roundtable workshop, where we will present draft recommendations and kind of sit around a table in smaller groups and discuss the proposed ideas and refine those ideas. Anything at that workshop will not be final. It's meant to put out there and discuss and refine and maybe take things off the list, maybe add some new ideas, etc. All right, I'll pass it back to Frank for just a closing slide here.
So as Mark just said, if it wasn't clear, we don't have any recommendations tonight because we've just kind of started. But what we do have, and as I just wanted to explain during the break, what you see on these boards around you are the goals or the recommendations of the 2015 Plan of Conservation and Development. And we're wondering, we took one off, I believe. We don't still have the Condot's, old thought of building a railroad station, because it's not the case anymore. But we'd like to get your input. If you think, and someone's already, a couple of people had started already, the idea is that if you agree with the 2015 goals and objectives, just put a green dot. If you really, really agree, you can put a couple of green dots. And if you object to something, you don't agree with it, put a red dot. And then there's room also to put, just stickies on any of your comments that you want to put on the board. Take your time and do that. And we meant to have you be able to do that during the break, have a cup of coffee, take your time on it, and then after, maybe say, we don't want to run too late, but certainly by 8 o'clock, we'd like to reassemble. And then if anybody has final comments that you'd like to, just have the P&Z here and us here, fine. We'll just have a New England, I call it the New England Town Hall meeting. And one of us, there's 4 of us from our team, so there's going to be one of us at each group of boards. And I've already invited at our last meeting the P&Z, if any members of the P&Z want to stand on any of the boards, and Jack's going to, I think, do that also. So with that, any questions on that? Suzanne, did I miss anything about discussing? Okay, good. So we'll take a break and reconvene at 8 o'clock and have some coffee. You have a chance to talk to us, the commission members, as you put dots on any of these. And we'll see how you agree, don't agree, that type of thing. Okay. Yes, sir.
Sir, just a question. This plan that we come up with, how does that get integrated into the town's, how do we use the plan?
Yeah, you're going to be able to use it. Well, first, it's a vision. But that vision kind of counts to other agencies, your regional planning agency, and the state of Connecticut. If you have a plan that calls for expenditures or changes in a certain way, that could influence what CONDOT, for instance, my favorite state agency, what CONDOT does or doesn't do in the future. One example, for instance, is we would like to see them put some sidewalks along Route 1. That's what we've been told. So that can influence CONDOT because it's in your POCD. And the POCD has to be cross-referenced with the state plan and then your regional planning agency. So that's one way. The other thing is, if the P&Z were to consider any zoning changes, we have none to suggest right now, so there may or may not be any. Those ought to be telegraphed in the plan, because as I mentioned earlier, the courts have said zoning ought to be based on a well-reasoned plan. Otherwise, you could end up with a charge of spot zoning if you don't have it. And the other one, and I think an important one, is your capital budget. The plan ought to set the stage, not for the details of, the police need X, or the fire department needs Y, but if there's a land use implication to what agencies want, that can affect the capital budget, and it ought to be in the plan. But I would say after the coffee break, we can go into that more. So why don't we all just take
Can I
a...
just
Oh,
add
yes,
one-
I'm sorry,
yeah,
go ahead.
Just add one thing to that. I think your question was, how does that impact, how does the plan impact what we do when we're deciding an application? And I think the simple answer to that is we're bound by the plan of conservation and development. I mean, if, an application comes before us for a special use permit or for a change in the zoning regulations, we always have to make finding. If we approve the application, we have to make findings, or even if we don't approve it, we make findings of, to the effect that that our proposed action is consistent with the plan of conservation and development. So we always do that, and so I think this, again, the simple answer to your question is whatever goes in this plan of conservation is binding on the commission when we make decisions on applications that come before us.
But it's an advisory document. It's not actionable like zoning regulations. The zoning regulations are, these are the rules, this is what you do. The vision is, and the plan as he's putting it, is sort of a more broad-brushed, non-specific, these are the goals against which you measure the rules. So it's binding in that you have to make findings, but it's advisory in that it's not a specific, if it winds up in the plan of conservation, it has to generate a specific action on our part.
Right.
Yeah.
Findings.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yep.
mean, right. And I think it's meant, Frank, you could.
Yeah, no, I think
elaborate.
it's...
meant
yeah.
it's meant to prevent us from acting arbitrarily.
Yeah, that's right in a way. And it's also just to set, there is a difference between the plan and the zoning code. The zoning code is an exercise of police power. It tells you what you can and can't do with your property. But the plan advises as to what that should be. And so the plan sets the stage for the zoning or the capital budget, and it also sets the stage for their findings.
Right.
And as I think was just explained. So with that, let's take a break because you're going to have a chance to, don't worry, at 8 o'clock we'll reconvene and just go into Q&A completely. But we'd like to get you to we'd like to see your opinions on the current plan so that we get a sense. Thanks. Would like to ask any questions, make any comments. I think as appropriate, the P&Z members may answer those, or if they ask us to do that, we'll also give you help on the P&Z a little bit. Yes, sir.
Yes, I would like to suggest that as part of our plan, that we consider under sustainability.
Oh, yes. Oh, you got one. Right.
Oh, I didn't know that. Yes, I would like to propose that as part of a sustainability in the plan, that we consider reducing carbon emissions
Right.
as part of that plan. And that could be in the form of getting electric buses or increasing solar panels in the town and things like that.
Okay, great.
There's a
great.
lot of money available in the IRA to do that, and we should take
The
advantage of that.
IRA being the Inflation Reduction
Yes.
Act,
Yes, yes, yes.
instead of, right, Northern Ireland, right.
Right, not my retirement plan.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
And Suzanne.
Thank you
you're
very
gonna-
much.
you're gonna
I'm Lawrence Messina. I'm president of the Orange Land Trust. I want to thank you all for inviting the Land Trust to come to this meeting tonight. You know, obviously, I'm a proponent of open space. At the present, and in addition to what that gentleman said, besides the trying to reduce carbon, even getting LED lights would help quite a bit as far as energy reduction and you know, getting the carbon controlled. But the state of Connecticut at this point has a plan to preserve about 21% of our acreage. So at the present time, well, the plan was to have a little over 600,000 acres preserved. They're about at 76% of their goal, and there's about 515,000 acres preserved in the state of Connecticut. The Land Trust is very proud of the fact between the Conservation Commission and our organization, we have a little over about 1,000 acres preserved in the town of Orange. We have some beautiful hiking trails. I suggest you get out and enjoy it. That's about, town has about 11,000 plus acres as far as its total amount. So at 1,000 acres, we're at about 10%. I was wondering if we could focus in on getting more open space to reach that 21% goal, even if we don't get up to 21%, even 12, 13, 14, 15%. But I'm concerned about the present farmland and the golf courses. And we had, luckily, we bought the Racebrook track a few years ago, which the town now controls, which would, to me, is open space, even though there are no hiking trails going through there. But I'm hoping that we can focus in on getting closer to that 21% mark, if at all possible. And when farmland, if and when it does come up for sale, or golf courses, make an effort to try to preserve that. Especially that Field View farm. That farm is the second oldest farm held by the same family. It's 12 generations of Hines that have held that farm. And I don't know how much longer they're going to go on, but something we should concentrate on. At this point, I want to thank you very much again for getting us all together tonight. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Thank you. Anybody else? Yes. Yep.
Thank you. I'll go back to my chair because I can't sit in front of everybody. This is on. My name is Anthony. I'm one of the local farmers here, and just to touch on what you were saying about farmland, it's interesting to learn that we have so much available acreage. And I'm curious to know if any of that can be converted to farm use, possibly to provide the farmers more land and, you know, potentially sustain the farms in Orange. You got to farm more land to make more money. So I think it would help to try and figure out in the future a way to create, either by preserving or creating more actual farm land and more ways for us to make money. So.
Okay.
Lindsley, yes, sir. I was on the board for a little while.
Yes.
Thank you. Frank, right? Yeah. Just a comment for you and your team. On your Orange Today slides, you had some good information on population, your demographic information, the income, and I noticed that the data was from 2010 to 2020. I think it would be productive to get 2024 current figures on that, especially since we've had COVID and there's been some shifts in the population and people that have been coming into Orange. I think we want to use the most accurate data to you know, come up with this plan. So if we can update those numbers.
Yeah, and we'll be able to do that. It's something I wanted to mention to the commission on that, but just so everyone knows, of course, we're all familiar with the census that's taken every 10 years, the decennial census. And because it's such a broad survey, it's the most accurate survey. There's another census survey called the American Community Survey, but it's a smaller take. It's a smaller survey. And we've found it's good to use, and we'll be able to update, we'll be able to use some 2024 data, but we're going to have a big footnote on it that it's not as reliable. That's the one thing. And I found that particularly in one Connecticut town where they said, that can't be. We have not had a decline in income for our population. And we checked it and found that it wasn't, in our view anyway, we couldn't validate that American Community Survey. So we'll put it in, we'll be able to update it, but I want you to know that the decennial census data is the most reliable, and then the American Community Survey, it's just that it's a more modest survey. It's good data. We'll put it in, we'll put a little footnote on it that it is not as reliable, that's all.
Mr. Fish, the decennial survey, as you said, is that done on, at every 10 years?
Every 10 years.
But 70, 80, 90, in other words, it's
Yeah.
done on the
Yep.
zeros?
Every 10 years,
Okay,
yeah.
that's fine.
You get the census people coming around.
Yep. So the last one was 2020?
2020, every 10 years.
Prior to the
Yeah.
pandemic?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. But thank you. That's a good comment. I just gave me a chance to say that, you know, we will have that new data in the plan, but you'll see still, we want to compare, you know, every 10 years because it's the most reliable comparison points, but we'll have that 2024 data.
Just in terms of Orange, it's a small town.
Yeah.
There's been some significant
Oh, yeah.
family developments in the last few years.
Oh, and those we'll be able to reflect because we got the building, well, we got the building permits. So that's good. Yeah, we'll get those. Anyone else? Commission members, or I'll turn this back to the chair. Yes, that's right. Oh, yeah, this is,
And
you know.
I was just thinking, the more the merrier. I mean, because
Yep.
it
And we'll have.
we want to do what, you know, what's good, what people think is good for the town of Orange. I mean, we don't, sometimes I, you know, feel like we may be in a vacuum when we're looking at certain proposed projects or whatever, and that's, you know, the.
Well, I think we've remarked in our public hearings before that, you know, all of the commission members share a pretty similar age demographic. So, you know, reaching out to the, you know, higher and lower on the scale, although we're going higher in age every day, you know, to get their input is very important because you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah, yeah. And there'll be other, what we're hoping to do, as Suzanne and Mark both mentioned, is from this exercise tonight, and then we're going to meet again with P&Z, we want to structure some questions for a survey, an online survey, which there'll be hard copies of made available in the library and you know, in town hall. But we'd like to do that in January, February, so we get another feel from all of you that take that survey, because that'll be a survey which, you know, can be tabulated and a little bit more scientific, if I may say. And then after that, we'll tabulate the survey so everybody sees it before the second workshop. We'd like to do that second workshop in the spring, and that would be, you'll have much more information, because as we do everything here, this slide presentation Jack has, so that can go online. So as we develop chapters of the plan, we'll give them again to Jack and the P&Z, review them. Once they've reviewed things, they'll go online. So we hope you get more and more information, you know, online. So by the time we get to the second workshop, we'd like to have some roundtable discussions on various items like transportation, open space, housing, you know, and they'll track a little bit some of the chapters of the plan. And like, for instance, economic development, well, Thomas will be at that table, and traffic, Mark will be at that table. Suzanne and I will split up between land use and zoning and, you know, demographics, that type of thing. So the second workshop would be a little different. And then we hope, because someone asked me earlier that, would they get a chance to then make formal comments? Yes. The commission is required by state law to hold a formal public hearing before they actually act on the POCD. But what we like to do, and I think, and the commission agrees, I know from having talked to them, you want to avoid at the public hearing someone getting up and I'll predict someone will get up and say, they get up and say, I never heard of this until I saw it in the newspaper, and why wasn't I involved? And, I didn't have a chance to, so we're trying to avoid that. So please tell your neighbors and get the word out. Survey will be up online, and these chapters will be up online. So we're trying to avoid that last minute gentleman or a lady who gets up and says, I never heard of this, and wants another hearing or wants the whole thing redone. So we're trying to avoid that so that we can, we can get your input all through the process, starting with tonight. So and I see lots of green dots, but I was wondering what those, I saw a couple of
I
triple
noticed
red dots. And
The
I,
red dots seem to be in the same spot.
yeah, they do. They do. So we're going to look at that, and we're going to report on this meeting back to P&Z, and it'll be the start of your input influencing us and therefore influencing what we're giving to P&Z, and they will make the final decisions as your representatives who will make the decision in a final analysis on the POCD. So,
Okay,
yeah.
thank you. Any questions of the commission? Happy to answer any questions.
Invite friends and family for our future workshops.
Yeah.
Everyone in residence.
Yeah, like I said, the more the merrier.
We'll support you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And by the way, if you see a big article that comes out and it says Stu Leonard's is moving in, we only put it in there because we wanted a big turnout.
All right, well, if we have nothing else, then a motion to adjourn the meeting? We have a motion to adjourn. It's been seconded by Commissioner Tarenti. All those in favor? Aye. Okay, the meeting's adjourned, 8:15.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you very much.